Hey everybody, welcome back to Recordology. I am so glad you're here. We're gonna have fun, you guys. Okay, so this show is squarely in the camp of people getting into vinyl and they don't want to spend, hundreds of dollars for a new record player, but they want something decent. It also applies to people that already have a suitcase player or an all-in-one, something with a ceramic cartridge, very entry level, and are ready to make that next step up. Today we're looking at the Ion Select LP turntable. It's actually discontinued, but they have a bunch of very similar items for a cheap price, and you can even buy this new old stock, I guess you would call it, at retailers like Best Buy and stuff for like 39 bucks. So it's got a magnetic cartridge. It looks decent. Haven't had a lot of great luck with Ion in the past. We've only done one other Ion product review. It was an older one that had like one of those multi-pin connections for your iPad with dock right on the side. It was kind of a weird design. But Ion specialty are USB turntables. In fact, they claim to be the inventor and the originator of the USB turntable. So this one is a USB turntable. Their whole thing is converting media for use on social media. So it's kind of an interesting thing. That being said, if you go to their website, you may think in your mind, oh, Ion turntables, they all look the same. There's actually quite a few. They have like 3 pages of products, including a kind of cool looking wall mounted unit that looks like a music note and stuff, and a lot of novelty stuff. But at the same time, there are variances of their turntable range, which look really interesting, at least from the standpoint of curious to learn about it and see what it does, what it doesn't do, etc. Anyway, we're gonna check this out top to bottom, unbox it. Well, actually, it's already unboxed. We're gonna review it and give it a test, all that good stuff. You're not gonna wanna miss this. So let me preface everything you're about to see by reminding you this is 20 bucks, okay? $20 at the thrift store. Sometimes you can get great deals at the thrift store. For somebody that needs a decent turntable, doesn't have a lot of money, sometimes that's a good place to go. So the question is this that turntable or is this no good? We're gonna find out. The first Ion we reviewed was the older one. Like I said, didn't do so good, so I'm hoping this one does. Ion turntables have a very interesting kind of design aesthetic. This is a pretty common design where the dust cover is sort of curved. Some of them have speakers right here. Some of them don't. There's one that has a plinth that kind of curves up and over and like kind of a dome. From a design aesthetic, they're very, very interesting. When we went out to CES a couple years ago, we saw their line of turntables. They looked really, really cool. That being said, they didn't want to do anything with Recordology, but that's okay. We still give everybody a fair shot on the reviews, and we're going to do the same with this. I am going to take the dust cover off because it's so reflective. It just makes it so hard to film. So let me remove that. It's still a little bit dusty, and we'll go from there. The fact that the dust cover does come off is a good sign. I mean, that's a feature that I've seen some. I believe we've seen some where you can't even do that. So this is a pretty sizable plinth, that being the base piece right here. You could easily fit a full-size platter on there, yet they've chosen to go with a smaller platter. You may be saying to yourself, well, what does it matter if it has a large one or a small one? If it's a full-size platter, it supports the record, its full dimension, and therefore the record rests completely flat. Plus, there's more mass inertia because the platter will likely be heavier in that instance. When the record doesn't have a full supporting platter, it has a tendency to kind of roll off at an angle as it kind of hangs, especially if it's a thinner record, and that could mean that the stylus isn't in there perfectly straight. Now, on a entry-level turntable like this, it's not going to make a huge difference. I mean, you're not going to be able to notice it in all likelihood, but higher-end turntables, people are listening on like super high-end speakers, going to make sure that groove is tracked perfectly, and that's hard to do when you've got a smaller platter. So this mechanism looks awfully familiar. It looks awfully familiar. In fact, it looks like what we see in those suitcase players. This texture right here is a giveaway, and the 45 adapter, the cheapest of the cheap, right there, is another. If we look at the counterbalance, we're thinking to ourselves, okay, this is just a suitcase player, right? This is just a suitcase player mechanism. We've seen it before where they take a suitcase player mechanism or an all-in-one mechanism and put it on a larger looking plinth to give it the illusion of something that it's not. But what's weird about this is if we go down here, what do we see down there? That is a magnetic cartridge. That's right. That is a magnetic cartridge. So to have that and this is kind of weird to have, going on all at the same time. We've got a cueing lever, which is good to see, 3-speed turntable. And the fact that it's got what appears to be, we're going to look at it closely in a minute, an Audio-Technica 3600L cartridge means that you can get a stylus that will allow you to properly track 78. So that would be cool. And then it's got an auto stop on and off, which basically means it'll stop playing the record when it gets to the end of the side. It is a fully manual turntable besides that. And as you can see, I haven't, polished it or cleaned it or anything. It's got the dust. And a lot of times these newer, because I'm guessing this is probably 5 years or newer at the outside, probably 2017 or newer. A lot of times, kids or people getting into vinyl give it a shot. They don't like it and they donate it or they move on or they upgrade and they don't want to try to sell their old one or whatnot. So that being said, you can get some, good stuff. We got that Sony automatic, which was half decent. Actually, it was pretty dang good for like about $20, and it was 5 years old. So you never know what you can find. So the plinth material is I think that's probably a plastic. It has some weight to it, a little bit of weight. I can still fairly comfortably hold it in one hand. I don't know if that's just a plastic. It may be a solid plastic. I was trying to decide if it's like an MDF with a sort of a lacquer cover on there. I don't know 100%. Got the Ion branding. I don't see speakers here, which leads me to believe they're either speakers built into the bottom or maybe it doesn't have speakers. I think it does, because if we spin this thing around, I want you to see the back. Okay, so on the back here, we've got Ion Select LP. This model appears to be discontinued. It's not on their site. You can buy this new on Best Buy's site, from what I saw, for like $35. So in that regard, $20 isn't a killer price. It's just, a bit better than, $35. Audio outputs, no big surprise. USB, like I said, these guys invented the USB turntable, so their turntables feature USB outputs. You can use that with Audacity and record your records to digital if that's interesting to you. I'm not a huge conversion person. We've done shows about how to do that before, and we'll do better ones in the future. But yeah, that's there if you want that. It's got a pretty satisfying power button right on the back. This is what has got me curious. Aux input. Not aux out, but aux in. So that tells me there's speakers. There should be speakers, right? I mean, if not, where's that input going to? So that's something we're going to find out here in a minute. And there's the back side of those clips. Taking a look at the feet, at least the rear feet here, it's almost a circle. It's not quite a circle. It's kind of not quite a circle, but interesting design aesthetic, just plastic with a foam sticker. Now I'm really getting curious at this point, because there's clearly no speakers on the bottom of this thing, nor are there speaker vents on the sides. We've got pot control for 78 RPM, or at least a punch out for one. I don't even know if that's really there. Okay, so there's a speed adjust for 45 and 33. The reason why 78's off by itself is the 78 RPM is done in a different way. This is actually, they always use a 2-speed motor, but even, are those caps? I guess those are caps, and the little pinhole you use to pry off. I see, so this is really there. Okay, just a little cap cover type of deal. But anyway, the 78 RPM isn't a different speed on the motor. It's done with a variable resistor, or a resistor, I should say. That being said, there's nothing else going on back here. Let's see if we can get a date off of the label. I'm not seeing anything that's jumping out, but nothing else. No speakers, nothing. And by the way, we will do a full teardown on this in another video, but today we're just going to review it. So I'm really, really more curious than ever about that audio input, that aux input. That's really strange. So it must be that when you have this hooked up to speakers, which we'll demonstrate in a minute, you can hook the aux input, which would override the record player and use those same speakers. Kind of a lame feature, kind of bizarre. Let's look under this little felt slat mat. Dun, dun, dun. That's a big surprise. That same platter. They've opted for the rigid approach. It's not, really shock mounted. There's a little bit of play there, but this piece is rigid to the plinth. This is pretty rigid as well. Not a huge deal breaker. This will be belt driven. So when we do the teardown video, we're going to go ahead and start by taking this E-clip off, C-clip off, CIR-clip off. I've heard so many different terms. Take the clip off, reveal the belt, which will be on the bottom side of the platter. The motor will be right about there. And we'll see what else is inside, if anything. Well, there has to be something. There's something, right? We'll find out what's inside. But today, I want to set this thing up and test it out and see if this is a good record player. Let's look at this. We haven't really looked at the cartridge up close. It's hanging at kind of a wonky angle, so I'm a little bit concerned. So let's see what's going on over there. Okay, so we've got the 3600L cartridge. You can see the wiring coming off. This is definitely not a half-inch mount head shell. This is just a cheap, permanently attached one with a grounding wire going to that little screw right down there. That's as far as the grounding wires go, I believe. And which is fine. I mean, it works. It's not the best way to ground it out, but it looks like it's at a precarious angle. I think what's going on here is this just needs to be, somebody probably tried to replace the stylus and didn't get it fully in place. Snap it up. Okay, so it's in position now. That's all it was. The 3600 features a carbon fiber cantilever, which is kind of a cool feature. Those types of little sonic upgrades and improvements are going to be lost on something at this level. This head shell is really cheapo, plasticky. They've kind of made an effort to give it sort of a higher end appearance. At least it's got the magnetic cartridge and not a ceramic, as the other one we reviewed of theirs did. I think now their line is kind of a mix of both the ceramic and the magnetics. There's no reason why this should sound bad. I mean, if they're using decent components and everything's functioning, this cartridge should yield a good sound, assuming they spin an accurate speed and it's consistent, which we're going to check as well. And I'm not sure about the tracking force. This actually might be a great setup because typically these mechanisms that they have the ceramic cartridges on usually track in the neighborhood of 5 to 6 grams. The Audio-Technica 3600 cartridge is a heavier tracking magnetic. It will track up in the neighborhood of 4, maybe even 4.5 grams on a stretch. I'm not 100% sure off the top of my head. I think it's like 3 to 3.5 is the low end, and then 4 to 4.5 is the high end. But we'll see what kind of tracking force. I've seen it done before where they put too much downforce on these. It is a conical stylus tip, so it's a rounded, spherical stylus. If this was a cartridge that had an elliptical, anything over 1.5 grams would absolutely carve. So we don't want that to happen. This is a rounded, fairly gentle cartridge or a stylus tip for your records. But let's go ahead and take some measurements. I'm going to hook it up and we'll start with the speed consistency and then we'll check tracking force. All right, I've got it plugged into the wall with the power supply back there. I'm going to push the power button. I don't see any lights or anything. Also, you'll notice one of these little rubber nubs is missing. That's not good. In fact, you know what? Well, no, because we need to check the strobe disc on here first, and that needs to replace the platter, or the platter mat. So it won't be a completely flat. That's a bad thing. If this is me and I bought this at the thrift store, I'd probably rip these other 2 rubber nubs out and use this. If I didn't have this and I was relying on those rubber nubs, those 3 points of contact, I would improvise something to make up that 3rd rubber nub. But for our purposes today, it should be fine. So let's go ahead and put our strobe disc on there. Let's see. Okay, so as you can see, it is marching to the left, which you may think is slow, but in actuality, it's fast. So there will be a little bit of drag added, which will slow it down a tiny bit once the needle touches the record, which will bring that closer to being in line. That being said, that's still a tad bit fast. We can adjust that on the bottom of the record player, no problem. So that can be fixed, no huge deal. Plus, slightly fast is less audibly noticeable than slightly slow. Let's go on to 45 right here. Typically these follow suit, and this one does as well. It is also fast, about the same margin, and 78 RPM at the top. Whoa. And I think that might be, Whoa, what is going on there? The speed on 78 is wonky. It's really wonky. I'm trying to decide if that's really fast or if that's a tad bit slow. I think it might be a tad bit slow. Looks like a UFO about to take off. See the wobble? Okay, let's see how this tracks. Again, it shouldn't be over. Okay, that's the high end there. I think that's the high end that this cartridge can track at. So it is a heavy tracker, but I don't think that that's like gonna destroy your records necessarily. I think that it will wear them faster than the same stylus tracking a gram lighter, but that's not like some ridiculous number. Like it's not like 6, 7, 8, 9, which for this cartridge would be ridiculous. The tracking force requirements are dictated by the cartridge. Each cartridge is designed to track within a certain range. And I believe 4.5 is on the high end of this. It may be 4. I'd have to double check. So I just verified to be on the safe side. The 3600L, the high-end tracking force, some places is published at 3.5 grams, some places at 4. So 4.0 is the max. So this is tracking too heavy. It is too heavy. Okay, so we've got the Project 3 record with Enoch Light. And what we're going to do to begin with is connect the audio to the back and just simply listen to it ambiently. We're going to do a direct feed sound test as well, but I'm going to start by connecting an external speaker here. And let's just give it an ambient room test. Again, this isn't a big echoey room, so it's not like a super high-end experience here, but then you can see the crazy platter wobble we have because of that rubber nub being, gone. But we're reviewing this for what it is. Let's put it back on 33. I did notice that this thing drops pretty much like a rock. So there's not much damping action to it. A little bit. See our video? We did a video on adding damping fluid. You can do it even to these. As far as I understand, you can add damping fluid to pretty much any tone arm. My LP3 was dropping like a rock. We added a silicone damping fluid. Now it's like new. It's amazing. So, all right, here we go. Again, keep in mind it's a little fast. We got crazy platter wobble, but we're just reviewing it as is. So here we go. Now this is on a mono microphone, and you're not getting the stereo effect, but I can validate in the room. We are getting 2 channels of audio, so the basic functionality of this record player seems to be fine. If you got this record player, you could make adjustments to the speed. You could add something that the platter was flat. That rubber nub can be added with a little something, or like I said, take the others off and just use the felt. In fact, you know what? I'm just going to do that right now. Why not? So let's say that I just wanted to fix that platter wobble right now. I'm just going to take these little rubber nubs that are just stuck into these little holes, and I'm going to rip them off. So now that's flat. And we need to use the platter mat because you don't want to put your record on just like, rigid plastic. This case, it wouldn't be good. You may be saying to yourself, but you love those acrylic platters. It's a different situation, okay? But that should have fixed our platter wobble problem. Let's see. Oh, yes. Much better. There's still a little bit of platter wobble, but it's definitely improved. So see what I mean? A little bit of ingenuity there. Get your hands dirty and you can make quick improvements. The speed can be quickly improved. It's all good. I mean, I'm thinking this is not too bad. Okay, so what I want to do now, we're going to do a direct feed sound test, so stay tuned for that. But what I want to do first is I want to play this record in the background. And I'm going to hook up something to that aux input. In this case, it's a CD player. So I'm going to take the CD player. I'm connecting the aux or the headphone jack on this. And I'm going to start it playing because I want to see what it does in the heat of battle. So let's go ahead and power the CD player up. I hope it has some charge. Okay, I'm going to grab another CD player. Stand by. Okay, got a different CD player, one that actually has some charge to it. It is playing a CD. What we're hearing now is the record. I'm going to turn the volume up a little bit. What I'm going to do now is plug into that aux input because there's no switch to say input, phono input or aux input. I have no idea. I am assuming this will override what we're hearing. So let's find out. Okay, I plugged in the aux. We've got music playing and nothing is happening. What on earth? I don't get it. How does that feature work? Okay, being the consummate professional that I am, I'm going to try a different audio cable. Maybe it's a bad cable. Nothing. It just doesn't come on. That's a very good audio cable. So I'm mystified on that. Let me know what you guys think. I'm not, I haven't downloaded the manual to find out for sure. But I think that's a quirky fail. It seems like to me that the has an aux input, and I don't know where that goes. Of course, I've seen weird things too with the Marley that's got the headphone jack for no apparent reason with no volume control. So I've seen it all. But yeah, that being said, I think that this is a decent turntable for 20 bucks. I mean, yeah, we had to do a little tweaking here and there. Could use a speed adjustment, but not half bad. So, ultimately you're listening to the cartridge more than anything, but let's go ahead and listen to the $25-ish, $14-ish, depending on where you get it, Audio-Technica 3600L on this Ion turntable and give it a direct feed sound test. Okay, so after I filmed that clip, and I turned the record player off, and I was about to shut the speaker down. I'm like, do I hear classical music coming out of there? Apparently it does work. You just have to have the record player not playing a record. So the record player is on, but not playing a record, and then it works. Okay, now let me try turning off the record player. Okay, record player's off, and yes, it shuts off. Okay, cool. So I guess it's not as crazy as I first thought. Wait, what? I hear it. Oh, that's weird. It shut off for a second and then it came back. So now it's a pass-through. Okay, so it acts as a pass-through with some sort of interference that causes it to blip. Now what happens when I turn it back on? Turn the record player back on. Gives it a little bit of amplification. That's strange. Okay, all right, back to the direct feed. I want to append something that I said earlier. I said we're just going to be hearing the cartridge. Well, this turntable does not feature a switchable preamp. And as we know, a magnetic cartridge requires a preamp. That means with this permanently in a line out mode and you're not able to bypass its internal preamp, we are restricted to the sonic capabilities of its built-in preamp. So the direct feed sound test will take on a little bit more of an important meaning actually. So we're going to hear what this guy sounds like preamp and all. So without further ado, here we go. All right, and there you have it, guys. I hope you enjoyed this show. I love doing these record player reviews. They're fun. You guys are right. I know these videos perform better than any other video that we do, and I think you're right. They are the most fun. So if you did enjoy, give me a thumbs up. Consider subscribing if you haven't done so already. I wanted to give a huge thank you and shout out to everybody who watched our recent announcement video and had such kind things to say. It brought a little tear to our eye looking back and seeing so many friends, a lot of folks that commented for the first time in a while, just to show their appreciation. That meant a whole lot as we've just celebrated our 5-year anniversary. And it was very humbling. And again, thank you guys so much. I still need to get in there and give the Recordology heart to more and more comments because they keep flooding in, and just want to say thank you so very much. You guys are awesome. Anyway, my friends, that's going to do it for today. Happy record hunting. We'll see you next time.